Greetings and welcome to this beginner's guide for the Dragoon class for Final Fantasy XIV Stormblood. Now, I was pleasantly surprised with this class because it is actually relatively simple to play and to remember most of the things. They only have four abilities that require specific positioning, and their resource bar, well, their unique resource bar isn't that particularly difficult either. However, it does have a little trick once you reach level 70 that we'll go over once we get there. So, without further ado, let's talk about the abilities, shall we? Now, let's assume you are going to level Lancer as your first class, and you're going to level Dragoon while you level through the story. Doing that, the first weapon skill combo you're going to get is True Thrust into Vorpal Thrust. And that's going to be basically your bread and butter for most of the time as you're leveling. Now, if you're like me, and this is your like 4th or 5th class that you're leveling, and you're doing the quote-unquote most efficient but boring thing to do, which is Paths of the Dead, you're going to start with pretty much almost everything unlocked, which is a little on the crazy side. So let's go over the weapon skills, shall we? So, as I was saying, the first weapon skill combo is True Thrust, Vorpal Thrust into Full Thrust. Now, this Full Thrust here is our hardest hitting ability in the game, which is very weird considering that most other classes in terms of physical DPS, the most hard-hitting ability isn't part of a weapon skill rotation, but rather a ability that goes on a long cooldown. For example, the ninjas, the Raidon is their most hardest hitting ability in the game. For monks, what would it be? It's an ability that you actually don't use on monks because it takes away your major buff, so that's unfortunate for them. On Machinist, what was it? I think it was part of the weapon rotation, but I can't really remember at this point in time. But anyway, this is your main rotation. True, Vorpal, and Full. That's your main rotation. Now, as you level up, you're going to get your second rotation, which is Impulse Drive, Impulse Drive, into Disembowel, into Chaos Thrust. Now, this is the one I choose to start with because of the following. Disembowel reduces target's piercing resistance by 5%. Increases your damage by 5%, no reason not to start off with that. Then, we have Chaos Thrust. 100 or 140 from the rear. This is our second ability from relative low levels that has a positional requirement for maximum damage. The other being something we're going to go over in a little bit. And not only that, combo potency to 40, rear combo potency to 80, and damage over time 35. Definitely not bad considering some dots I've seen in the game are 20 or lower. And it lasts 30 seconds, so that's definitely very nice. So as you can see, this is one that's below here because if you realize it, it makes sense to start with this combo, with this weapon skill rotation first because you put these two on them already. And then you can go into this so that this does even more damage. Now, aside from those, what else do we have? We have this, Heavy Thrust. This you get at level 10 and increases your damage by 10%. 190 from the flank, 150 is something else. And there's no reason not to start off with this. It also lasts 30 seconds. So, you always want to start every fight with this. Now, what else do we have? What about these two abilities over here that are next to our weapon skill rotations? Well, these you don't get until level 56 and 58, which is very unfortunate because they're actually very nice skills, and these extend our weapon skills rotations here by an extra ability when we unload them. So this one gets activated by Full Thrust, and this one gets activated by Wheeling Thrust. However, as you can see there, can only be executed while under the effect of both Blood of the Dragon and the buffs that trigger them. Now, what is this Blood of the Dragon thing? Well, that is this. At level 54, you get this, and this quite literally increases the damage of Jump and Spike Shadow Dive by 30%. Those are our abilities, we'll go over those in a little bit. However, that is not the only thing it does. It also grants Sharper Fang and Claw and Enhanced Wheeling Thrust when you use those abilities. So, if we have this active and we use Chaos Thrust, this will give us Enhanced Wheeling Thrust, which literally lets us use this. Now, what about these abilities? What's so good about them? Now, as we can see, that Fang and Claw hits for 260, 300 from the flank, definitely not too bad. And Wheeling Thrust does the exact same thing, only from the side. Oh, no, from the rear. Yes. Yes, so side and rear. Now, the other thing that they do is that extends Blood of the Dragon duration by 10 seconds to a maximum of 30 seconds. Now, at level 60, this is barely going to be enough because you want to use, if you go, let's see, how do I put this? As you can see, this starts with a duration of 20 seconds. And the only way you can extend its duration inside Palace of the Dead is by using either of these abilities. However, because it takes you between 4 and 5 seconds to reach this point here, if not more, then keeping Blood of the Dragon up the entire time, which is one of your main goals as a Dragoon, becomes a little difficult then. However, that's just the main weapon skill rotations. What about our abilities? What about all the jumps that you see people use all the time? Well, let's get into those, shall we? But first, let's finish off with our last two weapon skills. That is Doom Spike at level 40, 140 to all enemies in front of you. Relatively weak, but it's basically the equivalent of all the other melee classes. And then Sonic Thrust at level 62. Now, as you can see, this one deals 100 to all enemies. However, it does have a combo potency of 180, which makes it very decent. And it costs 100, so it's 20 less than this one over here. So like every other major AoE spamming class that can do it, like say the Ninja or the Monk, or the Machinist, you can choose to spam this in a big AoE pool and your damage will go through the roof. However, you will run out of TP very quickly, which is why I grabbed Invigorate from the class options. Now, what about our abilities? Now that we've gone through all the weapon skills, what are they? Well, the first ability you're going to get is Jump, honestly, and 260, definitely not bad. However, returns you to your original position after the attack is made. Now, this is important because this means that, yes, you can use it to try and finish up something that's running away. However, if you don't kill it, you're going to jump back to where you cast it from, and you're going to be technically farther away than you were originally. Now, it does deal a lot of damage at 260, and only has a 30-second recast, which is very nice. Now, that is important, because as you can see there, additional effect grants Dive Ready. That is something we get until level 68. Now, Dive Ready lets us use Mirage Dive once. And this is important because, as you can see there, strengthens the gaze of your Dragon Gauge by 1. That makes little sense right now, but once I show you the Dragon Gauge, it'll make more sense. Now, our second jump is Spine Shadow Dive. This one has a 60-second cooldown and is weaker at 210. However, it does have a 2-second stun. However, I really would never use this as a stun. Honestly, we have access to leg sweep from our class options here. So this is the stun I choose. It only has a 40-second recast time instead of a 1 minute. So this is more of a damaging ability to weave in between our weapon skills. However, as you can see there, this one does not return you to your original position. This means that if you jump to something, you will stay at that something and land there. So this is definitely a way to close the gap. Now, our third jump is Dragonfire Dive. Now, this is the iconic one that you see Dragoons using all the time in dungeons that makes a giant dragon roar sound or screaming sound, and then everything gets engulfed in flames. I'll show you that once we go into the weapon rotation. But as you can see, this one has a 2-minute cooldown, but it hits for 320 to everything that around the target that you land, so that makes it definitely good. Now, as I mentioned before, our fourth jump is Mirage Dive. However, as you can see there, this requires Dive Ready. And how do we get Dive Ready? We use Jump. So if we went over here to the target, which are down there, and we use Jump, we could use Dive Ready once. However, as you can see there, it strengthens the gaze of your Dragon Bar. So what is the Dragon Bar? Oh, that is something that is triggered by this, literally called Blood of the Dragon. If I use it here, here is our Dragon Bar. Now, as you can see, increases potency of Jump and Spine Shadow Dive by 30%. So that makes these two, not this one, 30% stronger just for having that on. However, as you can see, it only lasts 20 seconds. However, as you remember here, Wheeling Thrust and Fang and Claw extend its duration by 10 seconds to a maximum of 30. Sonic Thrust also has that ability, so you can actually use Sonic Thrust to get it to its maximum duration faster than doing this. But your damage goes very, very down. So what else does Blood of the Dragon do? Well, aside from letting us use this and strengthening this, it also makes it possible to strengthen it with this. So let's use it again. Now, what it means by strengthening is this. This right here is actually an eye. These are the lower eyelid and the upper eyelid. And this is where they join up. If we use something that strengthens it, it is going to start opening. Now, you can open it up to 3 times. And that is done by Mirage Dive, which increases it by 1. So once you use Mirage Dive 3 times, it'll be completely open. And why do we want that? Well, once it is completely open, we can use this Gay Skull or Gayer Skull, Great Skull? No. Let's just call it Great Skull for now. So as you can see, delivers an attack with a potency of 220 to all enemies in a straight line before you. Can only be executed while under the effect of Blood of the Dragon. Additional effect, changes Blood of the Dragon to left of the dragon, Dragon Gauge cost 3. So as you can see, if we use this when our Dragon Bar is strengthened to its maximum, so that means this eye is completely open, this is going to transform Blood of the Dragon into Life of the Dragon. And what is Life of the Dragon? Well, that's this here. Allows for the strengthening of the gaze of the first brood upon using Mirage Dive while under the effect of Blood of the Dragon. All that did is tell us that in order to strengthen the bar, we have to use Mirage Dive while under the effect of Blood of the Dragon. So we know that. When the gaze is its strongest 3 units, like I just said before, use Mirage Dive 3 times to completely open the eye. Great Skull will grant you Life of the Dragon status in place of Blood of the Dragon. So that means once we get the eye completely open and use this, it'll become Life of the Dragon. Now, while under the effect of Life of the Dragon, Grey Skull will change to Nastron. Life of the Dragon will revert to Blood of the Dragon when the duration expires. So, if we manage to transform Blood into Life of the Dragon, that means Grey Skull here transforms into our final action, which is this, Nastron. Now, the big difference here is that it hits for 100 potency more, 330 instead of 220, actually 110 more, and not only that, but it has a recast timer of 10 seconds instead of 30. Now, if we go back into the Life of the Dragon here, let's see, it doesn't say how long it lasts now that I think about it. However, Life of the Dragon lasts 30 seconds. That means that in those 30 seconds, we can actually cast Nastron 3 times. So as you can see, being able to do this, it will increase your damage quite a bit, especially if there's more than one thing to hit. So even small groups will take even more damage from this. Now, so all that said and done, what is the point? So, let's go over everything else. So, start with this, start with Heavy Thrust because it increases our damage. Then go into the Impulse, Disembowel, Chaos Thrust rotation in order to get the piercing resistance down and put your dot onto them. Now, once you're of the appropriate level, that you're going to use Blood of the Dragon before you use Chaos Thrust. So remember, it's Heavy Thrust, the Impulse Drive, Disembowel, Blood of the Dragon so that it is ready, so that when you use Chaos Thrust, this actually triggers, because remember, Blood of the Dragon needs to be up before for this to be able to be usable. So it's Heavy, Impulse, Disembowel, Blood of the Dragon, Chaos Thrust, whatever you want to do though, Wheeling Thrust. That'll increase this duration to around 30 something, because it shouldn't take you that long to cast it. Then, from there we go into our main rotation, which is True Thrust, Vorpal Thrust, and Full Thrust, which is our hardest hitting ability. Then from there you're also going to go into Fang and Claw if you have it unlocked, and that'll extend it yet again, and you'll basically repeat that over and over as your weapon skills. Okay, so with all that said and done, what is going to be your general rotation at the start of a fight, and what are you going to be doing for the rest of that fight? Well, as we've gone over, you're going to start off every single fight with Heavy Thrust. Now, between this weapon skill and the Impulse Drive, what are we going to use? Well, we should definitely be using Battle Litany as often as possible, especially in a group. Increasing everybody's critical strike rating by 15%, definitely not bad. So far it's Heavy Thrust, into Battle Litany, and then from there into Impulse Drive. Now at this point we have another 1.5 seconds to do something else. Now at this point we should definitely be using Blood for Blood, which is our own, this is a buff exclusive to the Dragoons. You deal 50% more damage, but you take 10% extra damage. That really is a no-brainer. Dealing more damage and basically taking extra damage from something that shouldn't even be attacking you, definitely good. And even if you add in, you are dealing more than you're taking, so using this is definitely a must. So, Heavy Thrust, Battle Litany, Impulse Drive into Blood for Blood. Now from here we're going to go into Disembowel, and at this point we want to trigger Blood of the Dragon. Because remember, we need it to be active before we actually use Chaos Thrust so that it triggers Wheeling Thrust. So, we went from Disembowel into Blood of the Dragon into Chaos Thrust. Now at this point, Blood of the Dragon is active, which means our Jump and our Spine Shatter Dive deal more damage. So, it's going to be Chaos Thrust into Jump, and then from there we're going to go into Wheeling Thrust Now at this point is when, if you're at level 68, you're going to have Mirage Dive available. If you are not, so this is going to be what we're going to use. So from Wheeling Thrust, it's going to be either Spine Shatter if you're below level 68, or Mirage Dive if you are at 68 or above. So let's go over what we've gone so far. Heavy Thrust, Battle Litany, Impulse Drive into Blood for Blood, Disembowel into Blood of the Dragon, and then Chaos Thrust into Jump, Wheeling Thrust into either Mirage Dive if available, if not Spine Shatter Dive. And then once you get at level 64, you can actually link Wheeling Thrust into Fang and Claw once. So from here, we're going to go into Fang and Claw. Now between this and starting our second weapon skill rotation, if we have Mirage Dive available, we are going to use Spine Shatter Dive. Then we're going to go into Vorpal Thrust, Mirage Dive, the second Mirage Dive that we want to be using here. Now, and then, if possible, we are going to also activate Life Surge, because we're about to use Full Thrust, our hardest hitting ability. And making sure it criticals is going to be our greatest damage increase that I can think of here. So, it's from Vorpal Thrust into Mirage Dive, which doesn't have really a cast animation, and you can actually double weave this and this in between this and this, so it's definitely possible. And then from this, we are going to be using Dragonfire Dive into Fang and Claw. And then from this point on, is going to depend if you're level 70 or not. If you're level 70, do not use Grayskull or Grayskull, because remember, we want to reach our 3 stacks of Mirage Dive technically to open completely the eye on our bar so that we can transform this. If we are level 7, if you are not level 70, use it, because there's nothing else to do wait it for. If we are level 70, don't use it. And from that point on is going to be continue the rotation of Heavy Thrust into the first weapon skill combo, into the second weapon skill combo, while weaving any ability that comes off cooldown in between that, and repeat. That is literally all you gotta do as a Dragoon. Make sure you can follow the entire rotation, keep your buffs up, keep the debuffs up, and make sure you jump as often as possible. Now, with all that said and done, let's take a look at our special Dragon Bar, shall we? So remember, we want this to open, so we want this, so let's jump to get it open, and there's our first Mirage Dive. Now, I'm doing this very quickly just to show you the bar being open. As you can see, it's been slowly opening here. Let's make sure our Dragon Bar doesn't go away, that way we don't lose all of that. Let's see, here it comes. And there it is. There's our third one. And now we can now use Grayskull to transform it into that. Transforms into that. And it actually... Oh, I see what's going on here. I see. Okay, so... that is something I had not noticed before. Okay, so something I just noticed just now is that when you transform the Blood of the Dragon into Life of the Dragon, it'll transform whatever is left of the bar into Life of the Dragon. So, literally, because the improved Grayskull, which is Nastron, has a 10-second recast timer, we want to use that as many times as possible. That means that we want the Dragon Bar to be as high as possible before we transform it, so that we have more Life of the Dragon ready, so that we can cast it up to 3 times. Because remember, our Life of the Dragon Bar can only reach a maximum duration of 30 seconds. That means if we transform it, let's say using this and immediately cast this, it'll be a 30-second Life of the Dragon Bar. So that is that is technically what you want to accomplish here. So now let's go into the complete rotation, shall we? So remember, it's Heavy Thrust. No, anyway, Heavy Thrust into Battle Litany, then Impulse Drive into Blood for Blood, which is the little blood splatters there. Then Disembowel into Blood of the Dragon, Chaos Thrust into Jump, that gets us started, and then Wheeling Thrust into Mirage Dive if available. Then Fang and Claw, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, the reason we can go into that is because of our trait here, Lance Mastery. This lets you use Wheeling Thrust after landing Fang and Claw, and vice versa. However, you cannot just keep going over and over them. You are only allowed to do it once, so at the end of your first rotation, if you have Blood of the Dragon up and you use Wheeling Thrust, you'll be able to use Fang and Claw once for a damage of up to 400, and the same thing with Wielding Thrust, which is why we do it like the way we do. So it's Heavy Thrust, Litany, Impulse Drive, Blood for Blood, Disembowel, Blood of the Dragon, Chaos Thrust, Jump, Willing Thrust, Mirage Dive, Fang and Claw, Spine Shatter Dive, True Thrust into Mirage Dive again, Vorpal Thrust into Life Search here, and then until Full Thrust, our hottest hitting ability. And then from that point on, if you're level 70, you're going to go into Dragonfire Dive. If you're not level 70, you're going to go into Grayskull. And at that point, you end up with Fang and Claw and Willing Thrust. And at that point, our Heavy Thrust and our target resistance, the target's piercing resistance reduction and our dot are about to go away. So we start the combo all over again. And that's something that I found very, very nice. The fact that Heavy Thrust, Disembowel, and Chaos Thrust all last 30 seconds means they line up perfectly so that they can be part of our rotation. So let's perform that rotation we just mentioned, shall we? Here we go. Into Battle Litany. This into Blood for Blood. This into Blood of the Dragon. This into our first jump. This into our first Mirage Dive. This into Spine Shatter Dive. This into our second Mirage Dive. This into that. And then this into that. And we are now done with the entire rotation because everything is on cooldown. From this point on, all we're doing now is making sure our Dragon Bar is as high as possible so that when jump comes back off cooldown, we can use Mirage Dive. There we go. That is what we want to do. Let's see if we can actually get all three uses of Nastrond into that, shall we? Looks like we might. There's the second one. Yes, and we have exactly enough seconds left over so that we can use it a third time. And there we go. And as you can see, it gives us 20 seconds of Dragon Bar left when it goes away. So yeah, now I haven't been 70 for long enough in order to use Life of the Dragon inside an actual dungeon. So I still haven't gotten used to using it yet. But what you just saw is how you're going to start every fight. And then from then on, it's going to be quite literally repeat that rotation and make sure you use any ability that comes off cooldown as often as possible so that your Blood of the Dragon here is as maxed out as often as possible so that when you do transform using Grayskull, you get as much Life of the Dragon as possible. And that is literally what the Dragoon is all about. Repeat that rotation, well, until whatever it is you're attacking dies. Now, let's just go over this Doom Spike and Sonic Thrusting. Let's show you the range on those abilities. So, let's put it sideways, put us here. So, if we use this, which is Doom Spike, as you can see, it's got a pretty good range. However, this has lower range, but has a wider range. So if we do this here, you'll see he wasn't hit. And still not hit either. Let's get it this way here. He finally got hit. And as you can see, they have about a 40 or 45, 50 degree angle of those abilities. So that's really the only thing we were missing here. So yeah, that is the Dragoon. Hopefully, the rotation actually makes sense to you. So let's go over that one more time, shall we? Just to make sure that you understand it. Even if we don't get Battle Litany up, well, we can actually wait 10 seconds. It's about to go up. So, remember, Heavy Thrust into Battle Litany is how you want to start off if possible. And then Impulse Drive into Blood for Blood so we get maximum damage from it. Especially because Blood for Blood lasts 20 seconds. This allows us to do maximum damage with almost everything we have. So, here we go. Heavy Thrust, Battle Litany. Impulse Drive into Blood for Blood, then this into Blood of the Dragon, this into our first jump, this into our first Mirage Dive, this into our Spine Shatter Dive, this into our second Mirage Dive, this into our Spine Shatter Dive. Oh, actually no, that needed to be Life Search, but oh well. Mistakes are made in every dungeon, so. And all we gotta do is make sure our Blood of the Dragon bar is ready. Now there, I made another mistake there because I had to use Let's jump. There we go. So as you can see, transforming into this as quickly as with as much Dragon Bar as possible is what you want to do. So you can actually use that Nastron up to 3 times before the Dragon Bar goes away. Now remember, this is a bit of a complex rotation, and keeping track of everything can be difficult, especially when you're also trying to avoid a boss's attacks and so on and so forth. Now as you can see, because Spine Shadow Dive and the jump go off cooldown, one yes, then one available, then both available, it becomes relatively easy to memorize that. So let's trigger that here. And right now, nothing else has come off cooldown yet, so we're just doing this to make sure our blood of the Dragon Bar is at high as possible. Now, one ability I did not go over is the right eye ability, which there we go. That looked impressive, didn't it? So, the last ability I forgot to go over was this. Dragon Sight. Grants right eye to self and left eye to target party member. So this means you need to stop targeting whatever you're attacking, and you need to target a party member, then activate it in order to grant him and you a damage buff. 10 for you, 5 for them. And it lasts for 20 seconds as long as you're relatively close. Now, something I found that makes it easier for me to cast it as quickly as possible without having to figure out who I want to cast it on is something you can do is just cast it on the tank. It makes no sense to increase his damage, right? But remember, it's either cast it quickly, or something you can do that I'm not sure might work is create a macro and make sure you focus somebody. So let's see, let's target myself. I can't. Oh, I know, let's summon my Chocobo here. No, that's not summon the Chocobo. Here we go. Can we focus him? Focus target. There we go. Yeah. So something you can do is select another melee DPS that will be next to you most of the fight and set him as your focus. And I do believe that macros can be made so that when you cast an ability, it targets your focus character and then casts it and then targets back your old character. I think. Oh, and it also puts a little symbol on him. Huh. Well, that's useful. But anyway, yeah, that is the Dragoon. How do I remove focus target? Emote is not withdraw. How do I remove the focus target? Is it clear focus? No. No, I have no idea how to undo focus target. Examine with withdraw. Well, that's one way to get rid of them. Anyway, that is it. That is the Dragoon. A actually very fun class to play that has a little bit of complexity thrown into it, but not too much. And it's definitely a lot of fun. Oh yeah, let's see. I've always wanted to experiment with something with the jump and how far it'll take you back. So, will bringing me back up here? The answer is no. So, you cannot go back up a cliff. Now, the other thing I didn't show you is this. Elusive jump. This is quite literally a how long is it? A 15 yawn backwards. However, something you can do with it is this. Instead of jumping down a ledge, you can do this. Whoop! And you're instantly down there. Sounds pretty crazy, but I do believe because of that, you're capable of surviving jumps that you otherwise should not be able to. I am about to experiment that with this giant tower over here. Let's see what happens when I do it from the top of this tower, shall we? I mean, even though I won't die even if it fails because I'm not in combat. And in this game, if you're not in combat, you do not go below 1 hit point when you take fall damage. So, let's see what happens when we do this. Ta-da! Nothing! It actually doesn't even let me run off the edge. How annoying. Okay, let's find something not so high. Ah, this one over here. This should do the trick. And somebody's firing a tree person over there. And there is no giant Scion Ixion. I'm not sure what his name is. The giant electrical horse. Here we go. Let's try it from here. That almost worked. Almost. Not quite, but as you can see, That's a little bit of a fun ability. Also remember, it reduces your immunity by half, so if the boss decides to start attacking you because you're doing too much damage, jump backwards and you'll be fine. But yeah, that is the Dragoon. Hopefully you find this video useful. If you did or if you didn't, hopefully you did, otherwise I did not do my job properly. And hopefully I will see you next time. Later.